Hello guys, it's Randall with BitRaged. So this is the weekly Forex market review. I'm just going to look at a couple pairs that I'll be looking at for the week ahead and some things that I'll be taking a look and watching for. So on the DXY, what we're looking at is that ascending corrective channel that we've been looking at basically since May, June of last year. At this end of this ascending channel, we have this wedge pattern, which is an ascending within an ascending, and just increases the probability of that move to the downside. Now, if we zoom in here, we will see that we had 1, 2, and almost a third touch. We do count that as a third touch, but because it didn't actually touch, to see this move to the upside one more time, either to tag that trend line or to pierce that 100 level, which I think makes sense. It's a psychological level for the dollar to actually hit 100, be worth an actual dollar, you know, at least in theory. That just makes sense to me. We do have currently on the daily, it's very bullish, and we have what looks somewhat like a morning star formation. So we aren't actually at the trend line, and I will get rid of that for a moment so you can see we're not actually at the trend line. However, if you drew like that, that would work as well. So you could say that we technically are at this one, but we are seeing that rejection and a morning star type formation feel. And if we drop this down to the hourly, this is what is important right now. So we did have that move down. We did form a correction that broke to the upside, another impulse, a correction that broke to the upside, and another impulse. So to see this correction, this larger correction, push to the upside and then break, kind of fits the pattern of what we're seeing. It just catches everyone on the wrong side before it actually goes. That is something I'll be looking to see, especially since we're seeing impulsive movement. That said, we have had rejection every time we've hit this level at the top, but we've also had rejection every time we hit the bottom. So right now we're in a ranging formation. So we don't really want to get involved in this kind of a trade unless we get a break to one side or the other impulsively. If we do take a break, would I take a trade on the euro dollar inverse? If we form a corrective movement after a break, I would be looking to get in and along, because just to give you an idea, we'll take a look at that on the euro dollar. So that's the DXY. Let's take a look at the euro dollar. So obviously the euro dollar, very similar. The difference is you have 1, 2, 3. We do have that pierce here on the euro dollar. So a little bit different movement. It's not exactly identical. And we do see this impulsive movement to the upside on the euro dollar, and only a little bearish candle. So it looks a little bit different. You get a little bit different perspective here on the euro dollar. If you look at this, we had a descending pattern. It broke into it pretty much an ascending corrective pattern that we have here. And out of that, we are getting what feels like to me a ascending pattern, or you could almost see this as more of a wedge, as we're looking at on the daily of the DXY, a larger wedge. This would be a smaller wedge. So that could be possible as well. But this is very much corrective. We're not making any progress to the upside. So again, as long as we're in here, we don't want to do anything. We want to just wait for the market to show us its hand. We are seeing this impulse down. It impulsed up earlier, so it's just kind of doing nothing. So again, we want to see a clear breakdown, a correction on the trend on this ray line area, which would be double bottom, would be good. Or if we get this move up above and we form a correction and we go higher. So those would be areas that I'd look to. Obviously keep an eye on this as a double top area, but I'm not interested in taking any trades within this area. So just keep that in mind. You're just going to take unnecessary losses. All right, so Aussie CAD is an interesting pair right now. If we look to the previous area, I have that as a double bottom area, and obviously we could go down lower. So that is a possibility to tag those lows from the from history. But at the time we have here, we have a third touch on this trend line and what we like to see, which is an arcing motion and impulsive movement off. So we do have very much 3 days of impulsive movement to move off, and then we see a bearish candle here now. So we have to see whether that's going to come to the downside. Let's take a look at the, okay, so this is the 1 hour chart, and when you see impulsive movement, a correction, impulsive movement, and then it kind of moves maybe a little bit of ascending, but we ultimately get that pinnacle, and then we kind of move off almost identical or very similar to how we moved up, then form a correction on this side. Those type of patterns overwhelmingly move back to double bottom. It doesn't have to. It doesn't happen every time. It just overwhelmingly, you'll see those double bottom or come close. It's almost like a mirror image of where we came from. It's kind of interesting, but I see those a lot, especially at higher time frame areas of importance. So to see this flag play out, and maybe it's possible we get another flag entry, and if we do, that would be one to take. Then we might get that double bottom before we move off for the bigger buy. And that bigger buy does appear to be coming. Like I said, it is possible to move lower and tag the historical low points, but more likely would be to double bottom and then move off. And there's also even this area that we could bounce off from. So those are 2 areas that I would look to as potentials for reversal. Or the other possibility is this moves down and then it just kind of moves correctively and then moves off, and that's just a descending pattern to move for the buy. So that's pretty much Aussie CAD. Okay, so this is the Euro Kiwi, and for this pair we're going to try not to complicate it too much, but we have this larger pattern and then a pattern within a pattern. So this is an ascending within ascending. This last part we're looking at more as a broadening wedge. So we're seeing if we can tag this and then see what happens from there. But those broadening wedges tend to play out quite well. And basically we're in a broadening wedge here, a large broadening wedge. So it's a pattern within a pattern. Pattern within patterns work really well. If we drop this down to the hourly, so what we're looking at on the hourly, if we separate this, let's do that. If we just take this away and just look at it for what it is, what would you expect? Okay, so we have descending, we have that break up, an impulse, a correction, even though it's a little sloppy, but, and then what is this? Looks like a correction to me, doesn't it? All right, impulse, correction, impulse. That's what it looks like to me. So what I'm looking at for the Euro Kiwi, the short term, is a move up. Maybe we tag that and then we move down and we see what happens. We got to see how we react to that area. But right now I'm looking for this to move up because we have the conditions of an impulse, correction, continuation. Now, I will grant you this is a little bit sloppy, but it is a Kiwi pair, and Kiwi pairs are sloppy. So it's like this. This whole movement was corrective. But had you gotten in on this flag, and had you stayed in, maybe you won't stay in the whole way, but you could have stayed in the whole way up, and it still is profit. So you can't judge everything, the same way. So that's what I'm looking at is this, and I'll probably be either taking this or Euro Aussie here on the hourly. But we'll see how they develop and what happens. One of those I'm probably going to take. The last thing that you could actually do is you could take this and draw the pattern in here. Do this. And if you do that and you zoom out here, then basically what you have is a large broadening wedge, a big broadening wedge, and then a small broadening wedge within that. And so, and it's interesting because these kind of line up. So this could move up here to tag this, and then it's basically tagging and completing 2 patterns at one time. So that's something to keep in mind. But let's say that we got in on, let's say we get in on this trade. between 20 and 25. I think 25 pips would be a good stop loss on that. To the edge here is 7.5%, and then it's between, yeah, it's like 9% to the actual top. And often we'll see a pierce and then a retrace. So, but even to this double top, it's 4.5%. So it's good risk to reward. And yeah, that's why I'm considering taking that at the retrace. That is Euro Kiwi. All right, so this is Kiwi CAD, and this is an interesting pattern because we basically have a descending channel here at the end. The historical, you could see this as more of a either broadening wedge or more sideways movement long term, but this is definitely descending in nature. We get that overall arcing nature to come back down in double bottom, and we get that rejection. We do double bottom from a historical low, and so we get that move off. We do have a descending within a descending, which, as we know from bit rage trading, that just increases the probability of it working out. So again, if we look at this for what it is, if we were to take this price action and we were to do that, what does that look like? So obviously we have impulse. This is a clear correction, impulse, correction. But what about this last part? We move up, but then we're kind of moving down correctively. And then we get that impulse to the downside. Well, right now it looks like impulse correction to the downside. Now, how long that's going to last, again, are a lot of these Euro pairs, or I mean, Euro and Kiwi pairs, going to double bottom before they move off? So maybe, again, we might see that kind of movement before we get down to the bottom. It's just something to keep an eye on. But am I going to bias myself and say, well, you know, I know this is going to move to the upside, so I'm only going to look for buys if there is a clear sell? You know, why would I do that to myself? The risk reward is there. I mean, again, if you were to take a trade like this, you get in maybe 25 pip, and there's 5% to the downside. So if it does double bottom, that's a 5% trade. You know, and this is a little sloppy because the wicks and stuff, but there are better trades right now. I'm just saying, if you were to take that trade, this was a really nice trade there. But that's what we're looking at for the New Zealand CAD. Now, you could also look at this like that as a larger flag. If that is true, we might just tag this and then move up and move out. Or what we could do is we could just form more corrective descending and then break to the upside. Either one of those is possible. So we got to keep that in mind as well. So just to give you an idea, taking this trade, it's valid, but it's not high probability. So it's a valid trade to take, but I think there are better ones right now. EURUSD and Euro Kiwi, if they end as they are, I think would be better trades. But you don't always know for sure. Obviously, for the long term, we know Kiwi CAD is moving to the upside. So if we do take a trade to the bottom, we need to be able to switch our bias if we get that rejection. And we might even get something like that, and then it reverses. So just keep an eye on Kiwi CAD. Let's look at EURCAD. All right, so EURCAD, it's a descending within a descending pattern as well. We have that double bottom, and it's a double bottom from historical low as well. If we look at this, we did get that rejection from the bottom, and while we didn't get a total double bottom, it does have a little bit of an arcing nature to move to the upside. It's not one of your perfect examples, but it tries. We get that little steeper correction and then a move off, and we just are forming sideways movement. So not interested in getting involved in anything here. Obviously, this trade, you would take a trade like that, but then once it starts to move correctively, you're going to follow management to, take your profit and get out. So basically, with a trade like this, we do want to see a move to the upside like that and a correction. Actually, I don't know why I did a bigger one, because we have a bigger correction, it's probably going to be a smaller correction here. Okay. Now again, it is possible that this breaks down and we form a little correction to double bottom and then move up, because again, EURCAD is setting up for a long-term long as well. The other thing to keep an eye on is the same thing as we talked about with New Zealand CAD, and that is that we could just be forming a flag or even a pennant or wedge style formation and just adapt your trend lines as it moves out. So let's say this breaks out and then we get a rejection. It might be more of that style. Okay, so just keep an eye on that. But regardless, this is not a pair that you're gonna be trading this week unless something happens. So I wouldn't be interested in taking a break on a trade like this, because it could just break out, tag this top, and then reverse on you, and then you're going to take a 1% loss for a mediocre trade. You don't know. So wait for that to break out and form a correction. I think a dollar CAD has maybe a little bit more clear structure to look at. If you look at this clear impulse, you have that hover flag and then the larger flag. This to me looks like we should be seeing a breakout soon. It just feels like that should happen. Now, the way dollar CAD tends to work is it tends to fool around like this and then just suddenly bursts and it just goes like this. Look at this. October 1st to, you have about a day of just moving up. 2 tiny corrections and then this hover flag, and that's, it's just huge movement. So I really think that you'll see some move to upside. Now, it is possible this could break down again and we could see that before it moves to the upside. I think that is possible, but I don't think that is necessarily the most probable. Now, on the other hand, if we do see this move up and then it moves up like that, then we'll see that as this type of pattern, and we'll be seeing this to move to the downside. So the most probable on dollar CAD, I'm looking for this to move up, and if I do see a move up, I'm going to be looking for a flag to enter. Would I enter on the trend line? Yeah. If it does form a nice tight flag pattern, I would enter on the trend line like that. But you just have to be careful and watchful on that type of entry. Okay, so for British pound dollar, what we're looking at is this was a descending channel, but I think it might be helpful if we get rid of all this stuff here and just look at the chart there and just see the recent price action. Now, if you look at it like that, you could see this. Obviously, we're about to break that. As more of, you could look at it like that. And if this did move up, then you could add in something like this to see if it tags that. But obviously that's in the middle of nowhere and it's not founded on anything. But we are seeing this move down. But that said, we are in a range area, okay? So we're not making any progress. So unless I see a break out of this range one way or the other, it's not a trade I'm going to be looking at taking. So even though we might have 1, 2, 3, this is a touch, I would not take a trade on a break of that. I don't care if it goes or not. Now, if it does break down, we will be looking, so if it breaks down, I will take a trade. I will take a flag trade to double bottom out of this area. So that is possible. It's a very messy area, but that is sort of like a double top in its very arcing nature. So to see this drop out, it makes sense in a way. But we got to let the market tell us what it wants to do. And this just looks like it wants to correct. I'm not saying it can't break down because it does look impulsive right now, but I'm just saying that right now it just looks like it wants to correct. So those are the pairs that I'm looking at for the week ahead. If you are looking at a different pair, something that looks interesting to you and you're part of the community, just drop a link to your chart in the Slack group under Forex. And I'll take a look at it and let you know my thoughts on that pair for you. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them in the comments below. If you have any suggestions for future videos or any questions about our community or how we trade, feel free to ask. I have no problem answering those questions. As always, thanks so much for watching, guys, and take care.